Hello and welcome to the World War Lab channel. Today, we're taking you back to a moment when mathematics, experience, and military doctrine all said one thing and American logistics proved them all wrong. August 19, 1944, at the Wehrmacht headquarters in East Prussia, General Oberst Alfred Jodl carefully reviewed the latest intelligence reports from the rapidly collapsing Western Front. His staff had already calculated the cold, unforgiving mathematics of the Allied supply lines, now stretched more than 400 miles from the Normandy beaches to the spearhead of Patton's Third Army. To the German command, the conclusion seemed unavoidable. The Americans had outrun their logistics. Patton would be forced to halt within days, perhaps even hours. No army in history could sustain such speed without fuel. From his position at Hitler's Wolf's Lair headquarters, Jodl analyzed what every seasoned German general believed they understood from experience. An advancing armored division consumed nearly 150,000 gallons of fuel every single day. The Americans were now hundreds of miles from their supply depots. The calculation was brutal and inescapable. Patton's Third Army would grind to a halt, giving the Wehrmacht precious time to regroup along the Seine, perhaps even hold the line until winter. What Jodl did not know was that 125 miles away, 5,958 trucks were already rolling eastward in a never-ending river of steel and rubber. Their headlights blazed openly in the night, in direct defiance of every rule of military blackout doctrine. Together, they carried 12,500 tons of supplies every 24 hours. This operation, so bold that German military science had never even imagined it possible, was about to shatter every assumption about mechanized warfare. It was called the Red Ball Express. Within 72 hours, Patton's supposedly immobilized tanks would smash through German defensive positions along the Seine. Within a week, they would help liberate Paris. Within a month, they would be standing at the borders of Germany itself. The finest military minds of the Wehrmacht were about to receive a lesson in American logistics that would forever redefine their understanding of modern warfare. That lesson would be delivered by more than 23,000 truck drivers, 75% of them African American, who transformed a one-way highway system into the most efficient military supply line the world had ever seen. The confidence of the German general staff in an American logistical failure was not based on arrogance alone. It grew from decades of hard-earned experience. The Wehrmacht had pioneered blitzkrieg, revolutionized combined arms warfare, and understood better than almost anyone the brutal tyranny of supply lines. Their own campaigns had repeatedly stalled when logistics failed to keep pace with tactical success. In Russia, the Wehrmacht's advance had not initially faltered because of Soviet resistance, but because it simply could not supply its forces across such vast distances. German trucks broke down on terrible roads. Horse-drawn wagons, still making up nearly 80% of German transport, could not match the speed of Panzer spearheads. Railway gauge differences meant supplies piled up hundreds of miles from the front lines. General der Panzertrupp Heinrich von Launwitz, who would later command the 47th Panzer Corps starting in September 1944, wrote in July, "The Americans faced the same logistical impossibility we faced in Russia. Their mechanical advantage becomes their weakness. Machines require fuel, ammunition, and spare parts. They have advanced 400 miles in 30 days. History teaches us what comes next: paralysis." German intelligence followed American consumption rates with obsessive precision. A single Sherman tank burned roughly half a mile per gallon on paved roads, far worse when moving cross-country. An infantry division required about 700 tons of supplies per day. An armored division needed closer to 1,000 tons. Patton commanded 12 divisions advancing on a 60-mile front. The mathematics seemed mercilessly clear. That was 12,000 tons of supplies every single day, hauled over 400 miles from the Normandy beaches, across damaged roads, through a transportation network the Germans had systematically destroyed during their retreat. General Major Siegfried Westphal, who would soon become Chief of Staff to Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, calculated on August 20th that even if the Americans had unlimited trucks, which they did not, perfect roads, which they did not, and no mechanical failures, which was impossible, they still could not sustain Patton's advance for more than another 48 hours. Physical laws cannot be violated, he wrote, not even by American industry. At 2 p.m. on August 25th, 1944, inside a requisitioned French chateau near Le Mans, Lieutenant Colonel Laurent J. Ayres of the Motor Transport Service stood before a room filled with skeptical officers. The figures they had just reviewed were terrifying. Patton's Third Army was consuming supplies faster than any army in history and advancing at a pace that shattered all traditional logistical planning. Rail transport had collapsed under the strain. Scheduled convoys were useless. The entire depot-to-distribution system was breaking apart. Gentlemen, Ayres announced, we're going to create a one-way highway from Cherbourg and the beaches straight to the front lines. Every vehicle will operate 20 hours out of every 24. No stopping, except for fuel or emergencies. We will move at least 12,500 tons per day. The name came from railway terminology. A Red Ball freight was an express shipment that took priority over everything else. The Red Ball Express would follow the same principle. Absolute priority. No delays. No exceptions. The technical design openly violated everything German military doctrine considered possible. 2 parallel one-way highways would be created. One for loaded trucks heading forward, and another for empty vehicles returning. Operations would run 24 hours a day, with headlights blazing, abandoning all blackout discipline. There would be a strict no-stop policy, except for fuel or mechanical failure. Convoys would depart every 5 minutes, maintaining an average speed of 35 miles per hour. Mobile maintenance units would be positioned every 50 miles. Military police checkpoints would remove any vehicle unable to maintain at least 25 miles per hour. Colonel Charles O. Thrasher, commanding the advanced section of the communication zone, studied the projected figures. We need 140 truck companies, he said. That's at least 5,958 vehicles, operating at 90% availability. By every logistics textbook ever written, it was impossible. Yet within 36 hours, the impossible was no longer theory. It was operational reality. On August 26, 1944, drivers from the 3,916 Quartermaster Truck Company climbed into their GMC CZKW 2.5-ton trucks, unaware that they were about to become the living engine of the most audacious supply operation in military history. Nicknamed the Deuce and a Half, and loaded to the canvas with 105mm artillery shells destined for Patton's guns near Melun, nearly 300 miles to the east. The demographic reality of the Red Ball Express would have horrified and bewildered German racial theorists. Of the 23,000 drivers who would eventually operate the route, roughly 75% were African American soldiers, serving in an army that was still rigidly segregated. These were men who, back home, could not eat in white restaurants or use white public facilities in much of the United States. Yet here they were, keeping the most celebrated white general in America's army in constant motion. Within hours, the drivers created a culture of their own. They painted slogans across their trucks in bold, defiant letters. Patton's Blood Bank. Hitler, Here We Come. Detroit to Berlin Express. They invented their own rules of the road. Slower vehicles pulled off immediately. Trucks that broke down were pushed into ditches without hesitation. Any vehicle that could not maintain at least 20 miles per hour was treated as a roadblock and removed. Movement mattered more than perfection. By August 28th, German reconnaissance units began reporting something they had never seen before. A unit from Aufklärungsabteilung 116 radioed from positions overlooking the main Red Ball route. Continuous vehicle column. Headlights visible for 20 kilometers. No spacing, no blackout discipline. Estimate 1,000 vehicles per hour. Americans have abandoned all military precaution. This violated everything German military doctrine had ever taught. Headlights at night invited air attack. Continuous columns were perfect targets for artillery. No spacing between vehicles meant that a single disabled truck could block the entire road. Yet the Americans showed no concern at all. General Lieutenant Edgar Feutinger, commanding the 21st Panzer Division, personally observed the Red Ball Express from concealed positions on August 30th. His report to Army Group B headquarters carried a tone of growing disbelief and alarm. The enemy operates a supply system beyond our comprehension. Vehicles pass at 30-second intervals, day and night, without pause. They do not hide. They do not disperse. They follow no rules we recognize. This is not military science. It is mass production applied to warfare. What the Germans could not grasp was that American logistics were built on entirely different principles. Where German doctrine emphasized concealment, the Americans relied on volume. Where the Germans conserved vehicles, the Americans assumed a 20% mechanical failure rate and planned around it. Where Germans followed rigid procedure, Americans improvised constantly. The numbers produced by the Red Ball Express shattered German calculations of what was logistically possible. In its first full week of operation, from August 25th to August 31st, 1944, it delivered 89,939 tons of supplies. The daily average was 12,848 tons. The round-trip distance was 686 miles. A total of 5,958 trucks were in rotation, each making roughly 1.5 trips per day. The operation itself consumed 300,000 gallons of fuel daily. German logistics specialists captured these figures from American documents and dismissed them as propaganda. They simply could not believe them. But the numbers were real, and they were accelerating. By September 5th, the Red Ball Express had reached a rhythm that stunned German officers who still depended on horse-drawn wagons for nearly 80% of their transport. Convoys departed every 5 minutes from the western terminus. The average convoy contained 67 vehicles. The standard load per truck was 5 tons, though 7-ton overload were common. The time required to cover the 350 miles one way averaged 14 hours. Turnaround time at each end was only 2 hours. At any given moment, nearly 5,000 trucks were in constant motion. The Red Ball Express generated innovations almost by the hour as drivers and mechanics solved problems German military science had long considered unsolvable. When trucks broke down, which happened in nearly 1,800 vehicles each day, mobile maintenance units conducted repairs directly on the roadside. Mechanics developed a triage system, 15 minutes to fix it or push it off the road. Parts were cannibalized from vehicles declared beyond repair. Engines were swapped in as little as 45 minutes using mobile cranes. When the designated Red Ball route became congested, drivers created alternate paths without waiting for orders. They commandeered French buses to move personnel, so that trucks could be reserved exclusively for cargo. They seized captured German vehicles, painted them olive drab, and put them back into service. They constructed bypasses around destroyed bridges, using rubble from bombed buildings as makeshift roadbeds. The Germans watched this apparent chaos produce perfect order and could not comprehend it. German logistics doctrine emphasized careful planning, scheduled maintenance, and strict procedure. The Americans violated every one of those principles. Yet their system did not collapse. It accelerated. Perhaps the most astonishing discovery for German observers was American fuel management. The Red Ball Express alone consumed 300,000 gallons of gasoline each day just to keep itself running, more fuel than many German armies received for all purposes combined. Yet fuel never ran short. The Americans had created a second miracle alongside the Red Ball Express. Operation Pluto, pipelines lay beneath the ocean. Fuel was being pumped directly across the English Channel through underwater pipelines. By September 1944, gasoline flowed continuously beneath the sea, completely undetected by German intelligence. Forward fuel dumps were established every 25 miles along the Red Ball route. Tanker trucks ran in their own parallel convoy system, ensuring that no vehicle waited more than 10 minutes for refueling. General Major Walter Warlimont, analyzing area reconnaissance photographs, wrote, "The Americans possess fuel dumps larger than our entire strategic reserves. They burn more gasoline moving gasoline than we allocate to whole Panzer divisions. This is not war as we understand it. It is industrial overflow." The Red Ball Express did not merely support Patton's advance. It multiplied its speed. German doctrine calculated that an armored division could sustain an advance of 20 to 30 miles per day under ideal conditions. Patton's divisions, supplied by this rolling river of steel and fuel, were about to demonstrate something no German general had ever thought possible. By the Red Ball Express, averaged between 40 and 60 miles a day for weeks on end. On September 1st, 1944, the 4th Armored Division pushed forward 35 miles during the morning operations, then halted at noon for resupply. Red Ball trucks were already waiting with fuel and ammunition. After refueling and rearming, the division surged forward again and covered another 32 miles that same afternoon. A single-day advance of 67 miles shattered every German defensive model, all which assumed that 30 miles per day was the absolute maximum any armored force could achieve. General Oberst Heinz Guderian, reviewing these reports in East Prussia, initially refused to accept them. No armored formation can advance 60 miles a day for an entire week, he insisted. Mechanical failure alone makes that impossible. This must be propaganda or misidentification. But intercepted American radio traffic confirmed the reality. Even more disturbing to German commanders was the fact that the Americans were openly broadcasting their positions without encryption, supremely confident in their ability to move faster than German forces could react. By September 5, 1944, German intelligence had assembled comprehensive reports on the Red Ball Express. The implications were catastrophic for Wehrmacht planning. Every assumption about American military capability had to be rewritten. The report described phenomena that violated German military science. The Americans wasted vehicles at a prodigious rate, abandoning damaged trucks instead of repairing them. Drivers operated on stimulants for days, ignoring all principles of personnel management. There was no camouflage discipline at all, making the entire system theoretically vulnerable to air attack that never came. Mechanical failure rates reached 30% daily, yet the system absorbed them through sheer redundancy. Fuel consumption reached levels that would have bankrupted any European military. Field Marshal Walter Model's response revealed a tone of growing desperation. "If these reports are accurate," he wrote, "we face not a superior army, but a superior civilization. They make no effort to hide because they do not fear us. They waste resources because they possess infinite resources. This cannot be defeated by tactics alone." The drivers of the Red Ball Express paid a physical price that German observers never saw. Many operated for 72 hours straight, hallucinating from exhaustion and benzodrine. Accidents killed nearly 300 drivers during the operation's lifetime. Trucks collided in fog, overturned on shattered roads, or burned when overheated engines ignited spilled fuel. Yet morale remained astonishingly high. These men, most of them African American, denied equal rights in their own country, understood that they were making history. With every mile driven and every ton delivered, they were proving Hitler's racial theories wrong. Captured German officers later testified eloquently to the impact of the Red Ball Express. Oberst Hans von Luck, taken prisoner in September 1944, told his interrogators, "We knew the war was lost when we understood your supply system. You violate every rule. You waste fuel, abandon vehicles, exhaust your drivers, and yet you succeed through sheer volume. You have industrialized warfare beyond our comprehension." The psychological impact on German forces was devastating. Wehrmacht soldiers could hear American trucks all night, every night. Endless engines, endless movement, endless supplies. They might have 3 rounds left per rifle, while the Americans were delivering millions of rounds forward. The sound itself became a form of psychological warfare. The vehicles also stunned German engineers. The GMC CCKW 2.5-ton truck, the backbone of the Red Ball Express, represented mass production perfection. By the end of the war, General Motors had built over 500,000 of them, more trucks than the entire German military possessed of all types combined. They featured innovations the Germans had never fully implemented. All-wheel drive as standard equipment, not a luxury. Centralized tire inflation systems, waterproofing that allowed for 30-inch fording, engines that ran on low-quality fuel without modification, heaters that actually worked in winter. Even more shocking was the American maintenance philosophy. Where Germans rebuilt engines, Americans replaced them. Where Germans rationed spare parts, Americans discarded entire vehicles for relatively minor defects. Where Germany relied on master mechanics, America trained thousands of competent mechanics who could perform 80% of all repairs. As the front pushed eastward, the Red Ball Express adapted at a speed that stunned German planning officers who were accustomed to weeks of preparation for major logistical changes. When the original route toward Chartres became insufficient, Americans created extensions of the Red Ball system almost overnight. The White Ball Express ran from Rouen to Paris. The Green Diamond route connected Cherbourg to major rail transfer points. Red Lion ran from Bayeux to Brussels. ABC served Antwerp, Brussels, and Charleroi. Each new route became operational within 48 hours of conception. German staff officers required weeks of planning for similar operations. The Americans simply painted new markers, assigned trucks, and started rolling. The overwhelming presence of African American drivers created deep cognitive dissonance for German racial theorists. Nazi ideology insisted that black people were inferior, incapable of technical skill, and lacking initiative. Yet these men were performing logistical miracles the German army could not match. The drivers understood the irony perfectly. Knowing what Nazi ideology said about them only made them drive harder. Every mile was an argument. Every delivery was a refutation of racism. Some German prisoners, forced to work unloading Red Ball trucks, had their worldview shattered. They found themselves taking orders from African-American sergeants who calculated weight distribution faster than German engineers, spoke better English than German instructors, and treated prisoners with professionalism that contradicted everything Nazi propaganda had taught them about race and authority. The Red Ball Express also required an infrastructure the Germans believed impossible to create under combat conditions. American engineers built or reinforced 40 bridges, established 15 major fuel depots, created 26 maintenance stations, and constructed 8 temporary cities for drivers, all while the operation was already in motion. One bridge at Manise had been destroyed by German engineers specifically to halt American logistics. Wehrmacht planners calculated that replacing it would require 6 weeks. Weeks at minimum. American engineers built a temporary bridge in just 14 hours, while Red Ball convoys detoured only 8 miles along hastily bulldozed bypass roads. German engineers observed American construction methods with disbelief. There were no lengthy planning meetings, no detailed blueprints, only immediate action. They built faster than the Germans could destroy, creating infrastructure that seemed to appear overnight in open French fields. One achievement of the Red Ball Express stunned German artillery officers more than any other. Ammunition delivery rates that exceeded even their most optimistic theoretical calculations. American artillery units fired without restriction, a luxury no German formation had enjoyed since 1942. During the reduction of Metz's fortifications in September 1944, the XX Corps artillery fired 100,000 rounds in just 24 hours. The Red Ball Express delivered every single round, plus an additional 20% surplus. German artillery defending Metz was rationed to 50 rounds per gun per day. The disparity was overwhelming. American guns fired continuously for hours, while German artillery officers calculated that such bombardments required 50 truckloads of ammunition per hour. The Red Ball Express delivered it without pause. The Red Ball Express consumed vehicles at a rate that would have paralyzed any other army. By late September, mechanical attrition reached astonishing levels. The average vehicle lifespan dropped to 10,000 miles, compared to the normal 30,000. The daily deadline rate reached 30% of all vehicles. 500 engines were replaced every week. 10,000 tires were consumed weekly. More than 5,000 trucks were destroyed or abandoned. Yet the operation never slowed. American industry had anticipated such losses. Ships arrived weekly at French ports, carrying hundreds of brand-new trucks. Replacement drivers were trained in just 2 days and immediately thrown into convoys. German calculations showed that the Americans were losing more trucks each week than the Wehrmacht possessed in all of France. Yet American transport capacity increased instead of shrinking. They had achieved something Germans believed impossible: logistics that expanded faster than consumption. French civilians living along the Red Ball route witnessed a level of American abundance that contradicted everything they had experienced under years of German occupation. The psychological impact was immediate and profound. Red Ball Express drivers, particularly African-American soldiers, often shared their rations with civilians despite regulations. At every stop, children gathered. Drivers handed out chocolate, cigarettes, and soap. The contrast was striking. Americans gave away casually what Germans had rationed with severity. German intelligence reported the propaganda effect with alarm. French civilians now believe American victory is inevitable. They cite the truck convoys as proof. Resistance activity has increased by 400% along Red Ball routes. The population that once accepted our occupation now actively opposes it. In early September 1944, the Red Ball Express faced its greatest challenge. Patton's Third Army had advanced so far that even the Red Ball struggled to maintain delivery rates. The round trip now exceeded 700 miles. Drivers were collapsing. Vehicles were breaking apart. German intelligence detected the strain. General der Panzertruppe Otto von Manchefeld reported on September 8, American supply lines show signs of collapse. Convoy intervals have increased from 5 to 15 minutes. Vehicle speeds have decreased. This is our opportunity. But once again, American adaptability shocked German observers. Within 72 hours, the Red Ball Express reorganized. Intermediate transfer points were created, cutting individual runs to 350 miles. Driver rotation systems were implemented. Forward maintenance bases were established. The number of assigned vehicles was doubled. By September 12th, total tonnage delivered had actually increased. The crisis that should have halted Patton only made the system stronger. To supplement the Red Ball Express, the Americans introduced another logistics solution the Germans considered impossible: large-scale aerial supply. 47 transport aircraft began delivering critical supplies directly to frontline units. Each aircraft carried 3 tons. On September 16, 1944, Wehrmacht observers counted 900 transport flights in a single day, delivering 2,700 tons by air. At its peak, the Luftwaffe had managed 300 tons per day to Stalingrad and considered that an extraordinary achievement. The Americans treated transport aircraft like trucks. There were no concerns about fighter escort, no fear of fuel shortages. Losses were expected and absorbed through sheer numerical superiority. The Wehrmacht could not compete with this industrial arithmetic. The Red Ball Express also operated under command principles that violated every rule of German military hierarchy. Junior officers made decisions that, in the Wehrmacht, were reserved for generals. Sergeants commanded operations larger than those handled by German colonels. This decentralization baffled German observers. American logistics functioned without any visible central control. Every lieutenant acted like a general, every sergeant like a colonel. By all logic, chaos should have resulted. Instead, the system achieved unprecedented efficiency. The Wehrmacht, bound by rigid hierarchy, could not match it. By October 1944, advancing railheads began reducing the need for the Red Ball Express. The operation that had been designed to last only 10 days had continued for 82 days, delivering 412,000 tons of supplies over more than 122 million ton miles. German commanders, now fighting on their own borders, reflected on what they had witnessed. Field Marshal Model wrote in his final report, "We were not defeated primarily by American tanks or airplanes. We were defeated by American trucks." The Red Ball Express proved that in modern warfare, logistics is strategy. The transition to rail transport was itself a marvel. American railroad engineers reconstructed nearly 1,000 miles of destroyed French rail lines while the Red Ball was still operating. They laid new track faster than the Germans had destroyed it, often using captured German railway equipment. The final statistics of the Red Ball Express defied every German calculation of what logistics could achieve. 82 days of operation, 412,193 tons of supplies delivered, 222 million ton-miles moved, an average of 5,958 vehicles in constant operation with peaks reaching 7,000, a total of 23,000 drivers employed, 700,000 gallons of fuel consumed every single day, 40,000 tons of ammunition delivered to Patton alone, 15 million rations transported, and 135,000 tons of medical supplies moved forward. Reviewing these figures in captivity, German officers admitted they had calculated American logistics based on European precedent. They had taken their own best performance, multiplied it by 3, and assumed that represented the American maximum. They had been wrong by a factor 10. Beyond tonnage and distance, the Red Ball Express achieved something far more profound. It shattered German faith in their own military superiority. Wehrmacht officers who had dismissed Americans as soft, undisciplined, and mechanically dependent watched those same Americans perform logistical miracles through determination and industrial abundance. German prisoners of war would stand silently at the fences of their camps, counting the passing Red Ball trucks. Some of them wept. They understood what it meant, not only that the Americans could supply their armies, but that they could waste more than Germany could ever produce. They were watching their worldview collapse, one truck at a time. The Red Ball Express also forced an unexpected racial reckoning within the American military itself. Its success depended overwhelmingly on African American soldiers who were still segregated, denied equal treatment, and excluded from combat roles. When General Eisenhower visited Red Ball operations in September 1944, he witnessed the contradiction firsthand. His aide, Captain Harry Butcher, recorded, "The general stood watching colored drivers who had been at it for 20 hours straight. He said, 'These men are winning the war as surely as any infantry. We need to reconsider many things.'" That success created pressure for integration that would later contribute to military desegregation. 3 years later, African American soldiers had proven France what they had always known. Given the tools and the opportunity, they could match anyone. The Red Ball was their battlefield, and they won it decisively. German racial theorists struggled to explain the contradiction. SS racial science publications quietly stopped mentioning American logistics operations at all. The evidence was too overwhelming to deny and too destructive to acknowledge. After the war, German military engineers studied Red Ball Express operations in detail. The lessons transformed logistical thinking worldwide. Volume overcomes inefficiency. Mechanical redundancy eliminates vulnerability. Decentralized execution creates speed. Standardization multiplies capability. Human endurance has limits, but those limits are far higher than previously assumed. General Franz Halder, former chief of the German General Staff, wrote in 1950, "The Red Ball Express proved that logistics determined strategy, not the other way around." The Americans understood this. We learned it too late. Among the 23,000 Red Ball drivers, individual stories of heroism emerged that German officers found incomprehensible within their military framework. These were not legends, but verified accounts from official records. Corporal John L. Houston drove continuously for 48 hours, delivering ammunition to the 2nd Armored Division near Cambrai. He fell asleep at the wheel 3 times and was revived by other drivers, yet each time he climbed back into his truck and continued. Private Booker T. Washington's truck caught fire from overheated brakes while carrying medical supplies. Instead of abandoning it, as procedure required, he drove the burning vehicle 2 miles to a field hospital and jumped out as flames reached the cab. The supplies saved wounded soldiers from both sides. Stories like these, multiplied by the thousands, revealed an American military culture that baffled German observers. Individual initiative, calculated risk-taking, and mission accomplishment placed above rigid regulatory compliance. In desperation, German forces attempted to create their own version of the Red Ball Express in late 1944. During the Battle of the Bulge, Operation Greif included plans to use captured American trucks to build a German supply system. The effort failed almost immediately. German drivers could not maintain American speeds. German mechanics could not repair American equipment fast enough. German fuel reserves could not sustain the consumption rates. Most importantly, they could not replicate the American assumption of unlimited resources. The officer commanding the effort reported, "We captured 50 American trucks. Within a week, 30 were deadlined. The Americans would have replaced them. We tried to repair them. That difference explains our defeat." The winter of 1944 to 1945 became the Red Ball Express's ultimate test. Freezing rain, snow, and ice had halted wheeled transport entirely. German doctrine stated that wheel logistics became impossible below -10 degrees Celsius. Yet the Red Ball continued. Drivers wrapped chains around tires, poured alcohol into radiators, and kept moving. Speeds dropped from 35 miles per hour to 15, but tonnage delivery never stopped. German observers reported ice-covered convoys pushing through blizzards that had immobilized panzer divisions. The Americans had created a logistics system that functioned regardless of weather, terrain, or enemy action. It was not elegant by German standards, and it was not efficient in a traditional sense, but it was unstoppable. In May 1945, captured German logistics officers were required to study Red Ball Express operations for historical records. Their conclusions were unanimous and devastating to German military pride. General der Infanterie Friedrich Schultz summarized, "The Red Ball Express represents a form of warfare we never imagined. The Americans created a temporary civilization. Thousands of men, thousands of vehicles, millions of tons of supplies that existed only to feed armies, and then vanished when no longer needed. We built permanent infrastructure over years. They created superior temporary systems in days." The most insightful analysis came from General Heinz Guderian, the father of German armored warfare. "We invented blitzkrieg," he wrote, "but we never solved its fundamental limitation, logistics. Americans solved it through a level of industrial excess the Germans had considered impossible." The Red Ball Express was not merely a supply line. It was a flowing river material that drowned German forces beneath sheer volume. The Red Ball Express cost the United States roughly $100 million in 1944. That included vehicles destroyed, fuel consumed, roads damaged, and compensation paid to the French for destruction of infrastructure. To German staff officers who were trained to manage scarcity, the figure was incomprehensible. Yet to the Americans, it was considered cheap. The operation made possible the capture of 400,000 German soldiers, the liberation of France, Belgium, and Luxembourg, and shortened the war by an estimated 6 months. Each day of war cost the United States approximately $250 million. The Red Ball Express paid for itself in a single day of shortened conflict. Lieutenant General John C.H. Lee, who commanded logistics in the European theater, stated, "We wore out 5,000 trucks and 23,000 men to destroy the German army in France. In any previous war, that would have been catastrophic losses. In an American industrial war, it is acceptable overhead." An unexpected consequence of the Red Ball Express was its revolutionary impact on post-war civilian logistics. Thousands of drivers returned to the United States with experience operating the largest transportation network in the world. These veterans went on to found trucking companies, design interstate highway systems, and create the modern American logistics industry. Companies such as Yellow Freight, Roadway, and Consolidated Freightways were started by Red Ball veterans who applied military logistics principles to civilian commerce. They had learned in France that volume defeats inefficiency, speed defeats perfection, and if trucks can be kept moving 24 hours a day, the world itself can be moved. Military historians universally recognize the Red Ball Express as the decisive logistics operation of the European theater. Without it, Patton's advance would have stalled, Paris would have fallen weeks later, and German forces would have successfully established winter defensive lines. The operation validated American doctrine that placed logistics above tactics. While German officers studied Clausewitz and battlefield maneuver, Americans studied Detroit assembly lines and railroad timetables. The Red Ball Express demonstrated that in modern warfare, the ability to supply forces determines victory more than tactical brilliance. On September 15, 1944, Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, Supreme German Command in the West, received comprehensive intelligence reports on the Red Ball Express. After studying them for hours, he summoned his staff. "Gentlemen," he announced, "we face something beyond a military solution. The Americans have created a supply system that makes distance irrelevant. Our strategy assumed a culminating point, where advancing forces outrun their supplies. That point does not exist. They have revolutionized warfare, and we are fighting the last war." His operations officer, Oberst Hans Speidel, suggested attempting to interdict the Red Ball routes using what remained of the Luftwaffe. Von Rundstedt's response showed complete clarity. "With what shall we interdict?" he asked. "They have 6,000 trucks. If we destroy 1,000, which we cannot, they will replace them within a week. We would need to destroy 200 trucks every day just to match their production. We do not even possess 200 aircraft in total." Behind the statistics were human stories that revealed American character to German observers. Drivers who had not slept for 3 days refused relief because they feared their trucks might not make it through. Mechanics worked in freezing rain to keep convoys rolling. Teenagers lied about their age so they could drive trucks. These stories multiplied throughout the operation and created a mythology that deeply demoralized German forces. The Americans were not soft, as propaganda claimed. They drove themselves harder than Germans drove their horses, but they did it voluntarily, not from fear. That made them more dangerous than German doctrine had ever understood. The Red Ball Express became unintentional propaganda more powerful than any planned psychological operation. German soldiers could hear the convoys at night, endless rivers of engines that never stopped. The sound itself became a weapon. Units reported hearing ghost convoys that demoralized troops as effectively as real ones. The knowledge that Americans possessed unlimited supplies, while German units rationed their last rounds, created despair that undermined combat effectiveness. American psychological warfare units recognized the impact. They began broadcasting recorded truck engine sounds toward German lines, even when real convoys were not present. German units reported these phantom convoys as real, proving how deeply the Red Ball Express had damaged morale. In November 1944, when rail lines had been partially restored, the Red Ball Express was officially discontinued. But its methods had permanently revolutionized military logistics. The concept of continuous, high-volume, wasteful but effective supply became standard American doctrine. The final innovation was the speed of dissolution. The massive operation, involving 23,000 men, 6,000 vehicles, and hundreds of installations, disappeared in 72 hours. Troops were reassigned. Vehicles were redistributed. Routes were returned to civilian use. German forces required months to create smaller operations and years to dismantle them. The Americans built what they needed, used it, discarded it, and moved on to something better. When German generals surrendered in May 1945, many cited the Red Ball Express as proof of the hopelessness of continued resistance. General der Panzertrupp Otto von Manschenfeld stated during interrogation, "When we understood your logistics capacity, we knew the war was lost. You could supply armies faster than we could destroy them. The Red Ball Express was a weapon against which we had no defense. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, one of Germany's most capable commanders, was asked what had most surprised him about the American forces. His answer was simple: not your tanks, not your planes, but your trucks. The Red Ball Express showed us that you had militarized the entire production capacity of American society. We were not fighting your soldiers alone. We were fighting your factories. The final statistics of the Red Ball Express stand as a monument to American industrial warfare. Total cargo delivered reached 412,193 tons. Total distance covered amounted to 122 million ton-miles. Trucks employed averaged 5,958 daily, with peaks of over 7,000. A total of 23,000 drivers were involved. The operation ran for 82 days. Fuel consumed reached 57 million gallons. Tires worn out totaled 180,000. Vehicles destroyed exceeded 5,000. Total cost was approximately $100 million. German divisions defeated through supply superiority numbered 47. Estimated days of war shortened, 180. These numbers told a story that went far beyond military operations. They marked a moment when warfare changed forever, when industrial capacity became more important than tactical brilliance, when logistics no longer served strategy, but became strategy itself. In 1994, on the 50th anniversary of D-Day, the United States Postal Service issued a commemorative stamp honoring the Red Ball Express at the National Postal Museum in Washington, D.C. The ceremony recognized an operation that had long been overshadowed by combat actions, yet it proved equally decisive in Allied victory. Veterans who attended spoke with pride about their role in proving that American industrial power and individual determination could overcome any obstacle. They had driven through exhaustion, through mechanical failure, through weather that halted armored divisions. They had been mostly black soldiers, segregated, discriminated against, denied recognition during the war. Yet they had delivered victory at 35 miles per hour. The Red Ball Express proved that in modern warfare, logistics is not support. It is the main effort. The operation demonstrated that an industrial democracy could mobilize resources on a scale that totalitarian efficiency could never match. German generals who had laughed at American logistics were silenced by 6,000 trucks delivering 12,500 tons daily across 700 miles of liberated France. They had assumed Americans would follow European precedent, conserve resources, and advance cautiously. Instead, Americans unleashed a logistics tsunami that drowned German forces in Allied abundance. The operation succeeded not because of military genius alone, but because of qualities the Germans never fully understood: industrial excess, mechanical skill, improvisation, and above all, the initiative of individual soldiers who made independent decisions that, in the Wehrmacht, would have required approval from a field marshal. In his memoirs, General George S. Patton, whose Third Army was a primary beneficiary of the Red Ball Express, wrote the ultimate tribute. The truck drivers of the Red Ball Express deserved as much credit for the defeat of Germany as any combat unit. They drove through exhaustion, through mechanical failure, through weather that stopped armor. Without them, the Third Army does not move. Without movement, we do not win. They were mostly black soldiers, segregated, discriminated against, denied recognition. But they won the war as surely as any rifleman. History must record this truth. That truth stands as the final testament to the Red Ball Express. 23,000 mostly African-American drivers, operating 6,000 trucks on a one-way highway to victory, achieved what German military science declared impossible. They supplied advancing armies faster than physics was supposed to allow, maintained tempo beyond assumed human endurance, and proved that in modern warfare, the side with the most trucks defeats the side with the best tactics. The German generals had laughed at American logistics, dismissing it as wasteful, undisciplined, and impossible to sustain. 82 days later, those same generals surrendered the army supplied by the Red Ball Express. Finally understanding that American trucks had defeated German tanks, that industrial abundance had overwhelmed military excellence, and that logistics had become strategy, the Red Ball Express officially ended on November 16, 1944, but its impact echoed through military history. It proved that in the industrial age, victory belongs not to bravest soldiers or the most brilliant generals, but to the nation that can deliver the most supplies, the fastest, over the greatest distance. The German generals who laughed at American logistics in August 1944 signed surrender documents in May 1945, defeated by 23,000 truck drivers who revolutionized warfare at 35 miles per hour. Their story deserves a place among the greatest military operations in history, not because it was elegant or efficient, for it was neither, but because it worked. The Red Ball Express kept Patton moving, kept the Germans retreating, and proved that in modern war, the convoy of trucks matters more than the column of tanks. The highways of France still bear scars of the Red Ball Express. Ruts carved by overloaded trucks, bridges hastily repaired, roadsides once littered with abandoned vehicles. But the greatest monument to the operation is the speed of Allied victory itself. Every day the war was shortened saved thousands of lives. The Red Ball Express shortened it by months. In the end, the German generals who mocked American logistics learned the hardest lesson of modern warfare. Amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics, and Americans talk trucks. The Red Ball Express was America speaking loudly, in the roar of 6,000 engines that never stopped, carrying democracy and destruction at 35 miles per hour down a one-way road to victory. The last word belongs to a German officer whose name has been lost to history, quoted by a Red Ball driver at the 1994 commemoration. Standing beside a road in Belgium, watching the endless convoy of American trucks, the officer said in heavily accented English to his captors, "We prepared for everything. Your tanks, your planes, your ships. We never prepared for your trucks. How do you defeat an enemy who has more trucks than you have soldiers?" The answer rolled past him every 5 minutes, driven by exhausted Americans who were rewriting the rules of warfare, one delivery at a time. The Red Ball Express had turned logistics into strategy, supply into victory, and trucks into the most decisive weapon of the European war. The German generals stopped laughing when they finally understood this truth. By then, Patton was already at their gates, supplied by the greatest logistics operation in military history.